some jazz today. Yes, you gon' learn, you gon' learn, you gon' learn. It was just past 1, 2, 3 man with a 4, 5 step to the door like, oh my gosh, just throw that cash in a backpack.
This is episode 2 of the Irie podcast. We're doing A for authenticity. This is Vince.
This is Liz.
Let's get into it.
It's gonna be a good one.
So,
alphabet topics.
Let's talk about this. So, when we were strategizing about doing a podcast, I think the biggest idea was like, how are we going to be different? Like, there's a lot of topics, especially in the entrepreneurship, self-help space, that they talk about similar topics. Mm-hmm. And you had that genius idea, like, wait, why don't we just use the alphabet and we pick a word for the letter. Sorry, guys, this is my birthday last night, and we are definitely feeling the effects of the turn up. To keep it short. And
I just felt like doing an alphabet would help. You know, my ESFJ brain. I need to organize it, but I just thought it'd be cool to kind of go through the alphabet and one by one tackle topics around questions we get asked a lot. I always feel like that's what's going to help people the most is like, what are people asking you about?
Exactly.
And then talk about that. So A is for authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that topic?
Great, because me being at ENFP, this is what we're all about.
Right. It's your main driver.
Yes. What's that quote? I forgot the guy who said it, but it was like, be yourself because everyone else is taken.
Yeah.
That's literally my whole motto since I think I've been alive.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be an individual and I always wanted to be myself. And I think for life in general, being authentic is the goal, I feel like.
So how would you define authenticity?
To me is and I think it morphs a lot, but for me it's just being yourself, being true to yourself, kind of being in line with your conscience a lot. That's how I can gauge if I'm being authentic or not. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't feel right in my gut, I'm like, right? And obviously you have to have some gauge. You could be nervous, right? Mm-hmm. But if it feels completely wrong, you might see when we have conversations a lot, I'll tend to overcorrect or say something if someone's talking with me in conversation, but it's not that for me, it's actually this, because I don't want to just say yes and be inauthentic.
Yeah, you're good at that.
Yeah, I'm more about, I'm kind of self-aware a little bit to the point where I know where it actually hits and it's true for me. That kind of somebody says something, you read something, you see something that relates to me.
Right.
I have that good key, personally.
That's cool.
How about you?
I would say I define authenticity as really being true to yourself, not really worrying about perfection. I have an online business and my business is social media based. And these days everything is super curated and everything's hyper edited and people are only showing the whole highlight reel situation. So I think that it's super difficult and it's a challenge for my peers to be an influencer, to be influential, but to do it authentically, as opposed to being lured by perhaps financial benefits and things like that. So I think the reason my brand is so successful is because I've been able to remain authentic. So I think it would be important today and maybe helpful to share how I've been able to stay authentic and maybe some tips for people that are, wanting to basically be themselves, but maybe not be so worried about it or see the benefit of it or maybe know how to do it.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits of being authentic for your business?
Well, first off, you touched on something about being on social media or on the internet a lot. We all show the best version of ourselves. Yeah. So I feel like innately you're just gonna start comparing yourself to other people. And I think humans as a whole conform. That's part of our nature. We like to be in groups and we like to conform with whatever thing we identify with. So sometimes it's really hard to be authentic, right?
Right. Being part of the herd, it's a survival tactic. So you think that I'm a huge groups person. So it's leaving the herd. It's a primal fear that you're going to die off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to me to see how people navigate this with social media. Right. Personally, I think I used to be super sensitive as a kid. because I was like myself. And if anyone made me feel weird for being myself, I like took it really hard, like all the time. But then I started realizing that at a very young age, I watched people just do what other people were doing, not what they always wanted to do. And for some reason, I don't know what it was, but it like literally struck my core. Like, I'll never be that person.
Right.
If I don't want to play tag, I'm not playing tag.
Right.
Like, for something hit me where I was like, I don't want to be that person.
Right.
And I don't care if I get not played with or hung out with.
Yeah.
I'll just do my own thing.
You weren't worried about people pleasing and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm an EFMP, I didn't really think too much about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of more like, all right, I'll just play by myself. Or we just do what I want to do, right?
Right. Looking more at what's important for you versus what's important for others.
Exactly.
Which is like my biggest struggle.
Especially when it comes to business and life. I think once you get to a certain age, you should start defining who you are and what you like. And obviously it's going to be edited and changed. But if you want to do anything meaningful with your life outside of work and even personal stuff, like I think you got to have your true compass and know what you want and how you want to do it. Or you just like, I mean, we get one life. We don't get like 10 of these.
We don't?
No.
So how has being, why is it important to be authentic from a business perspective?
Have you guys heard the saying, real recognizes real?
Yep.
Right? So like, I think like people who are real or people who are authentic tend to be drawn to people who are also real and authentic.
Yeah.
Hence our relationship,
Right.
right? We could tell that like,
right away
that like, oh, this person's like who they are.
Like from day one, I think that's what drew me to you.
Yeah, and like I think we have to always or also show the difference between having a persona and what actually is being authentic. 'Cause I think a lot of people have an authentic persona, but like, they're actually not authentic. They're acting like they're really true and they care about. But you can just.
Don't you feel like people are savvy enough to see through that?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't. We've been like the way like my generation. Like I've been on the internet forever.
Right.
So like
you can see through it.
We've been sold every single which way. We've had the guy knock on the door and sell you on something, and we've had the banner I try to sell you something, and like so for me it's like I think we have a really good gauge on when you're not being authentic, and it's super funny to me when someone like people who are authentic and then work their butt off to be like seem like they're authentic, and I'm like I can see that,
but really they're just trying to be perfect.
Exactly.
So I think from my perspective, the reason being authentic is super important is that obviously it benefits my clients if I have influence. So for me, for example, I pay a lot of attention about what brands I partner with because I care a lot about my brand and I'm being authentic to who I am. So for example, as a recipe developer, I'm not going to represent, certain foods that I wouldn't actually buy or cook with, otherwise.
Talk about that. Talk about how you navigate that world, being an influencer, being someone who has influence on people and such a big brand. Obviously, all these brands are hitting you up. How do you navigate that no matter how good the money is or the opportunity can be?
So I got really comfortable early on with saying no. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, turning away lots of cash is not the most fun part of the job. But the more I say no, the bigger my business grows. And I think on another topic, another day we'll talk a lot about why the power of a no. But for me, I turn away about 90% of what comes my way because it isn't authentic to who I am. And here's the deal is that, like you said, people are savvy. So if I'm, suddenly, trying to push products that I wouldn't normally buy or cook with, like people are going to see through that.
Exactly.
So for me, there's no amount of money, worth it. And fortunately, I have never been super driven by money. Yeah. I don't have like that scarcity mindset, and I don't make a lot of decisions based on fear. So that helps. So I'll admit that it's probably perhaps easier for me than other influencers perhaps, but I think there's no amount of money that's more worthwhile or more valuable than my brand.
I think it's such a buzzword saying being authentic and all this, right? But I do think it's like one of those things where it's like, it's true. And I think everyone's chasing this idea of being authentic and building authentic brands. Right. In your experience, like, what does that mean for you? And like, how do you go about building that?
Well, I think for me, for example, on my website, there's a lot of recipes I could be posting that would probably get a lot more page views, or the videos would like go viral with like ooey gooey chocolate or caramel or things like that. But, I don't eat a lot of sweets, and I'm trying to keep 65 pounds off. So I eat a certain way, and that type of way might not be the most popular, might not garner viral recipes or the most page views. Like, there's probably less people searching for like a Lebanese salad than a caramel cake, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I could, of course, post recipes just for the sake of getting page views. And many people do that successfully, but my brand is really about me as a person and the types of foods that I eat. And it's more important for me to live a healthy lifestyle by example than to perhaps get the most page views than any other blog in the world. So that's an example where I post a lot of like Vietnamese recipes. Like, those recipes aren't as popular as a casserole, bottom line. Exactly. But I don't want to eat a casserole. I want to eat Vietnamese food. So that's what I'm blogging about. Also, it's exhausting to try to maintain like who you aren't authentically long term. Yeah, and I was like getting into that next is like, if you're not authentic, it's very hard to keep that up. It's not sustainable. No. And life gets really hard. And like, I think it's also so competitive that people are just testing everything out, right? And just like, wait a minute. Like, long term, right? Not only with short term monetary value, right? Like, I always tell people like, money's made up. Like, so doing things for money a lot of times is like kind of in vain, because just a piece of paper. Yeah, it's a feeling. Like, it's not really like, what is it like? We talked about this like, what does that actually even mean? Right. So, or even for the love or admiration of people too is like if people don't like you who you are, why do you want to win them over? Right. Like if you have to be somebody else to be friends with somebody else, like, that's not your people, that's not your tribe, and you shouldn't live your life wanting people who don't really care about you anyway. Exactly. Right? Like, life gets really quick, really easy. Well, and I think also when we are authentic, it's everything is so saturated. So there's a million food blogs, there's a million restaurants, right? So being authentic is a way to separate from the herd and to be memorable. And I remember even in my early days of going into Irie Kitchen, like, we always laugh about it. But I remember you like, A, you played hip hop, which most restaurants don't. Yeah. And B, you were like dancing to it. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, thank you. Like, that's forget us end up becoming friends, but like, when you go to a business and you see people being real and not being super stiff and scripted and polished and perfect, I don't personally want to be around people like that, because then it's like, I feel like I need to be that way. Exactly. I think that's like, is that something that you like? Do you realize? You probably aren't doing it on purpose, of course. So, but do you realize it? Sometimes, but not really. Like, the on purpose part is like, what we're not gonna do is not be ourselves. Right. So we are being intentional when you come into a space like mine, like, not to be, not real. I want you to feel like you're in my house, or you're gonna go to Jamaica. Like, this is how we really interact. Like, no one in Jamaica is like super stiff. Right. With no unapproachable. With no love and no that's not our culture. Yeah. So like, for me to give you that with me being inauthentic, also if I have to be in a spot for 16 hours a day, I really don't want to not have fun. Right. Like, I didn't create this thing for me to be like in mental prison. Like, it's funny, that's an ENFP thing as well. They need to have fun at the workplace. Exactly. So that's smart that you built that. I'm gonna play the music I want to play. Yeah. And I'm gonna blast it how I want to blast it, and I'm gonna give you food how I want to, because it's my obviously there's rules you have to follow, but like, when it starts coming to like how that's my domain, what I want to control, and it just makes you feel so much better. Yeah. And like, you do see the long-term benefits. Like, tell me a bit about that. What benefits have you found? In the beginning, other than me becoming your friend. In the beginning, obviously, like, you're like, okay, like, we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan here, so like, playing hip hop at a restaurant is weird. Like, they don't play that kind of music in Grand Rapids. Right. So I'm ready going against the grain, because my customer who's a normal dine outer, right, is not ready to walk into a restaurant where they're playing hip hop or even Caribbean music. Right. They're either not listening to music or some top 40 hits or some stuff some country, right? So like, me doing that is already like, in the beginning at first it's kind of like, oh, like people are trying to put pressure on me, like, change the music
or turn
Do
it
they
down.
really say
yeah.
that?
Yeah, they'd be like, turn the music down, or like no,
If
like,
you stop playing the hip hop, I might not keep going.
I'm like, listen, if you come into my space, the whole point is you to catch a vibe,
Right.
and catch that light. And so, if we're not gonna do that, then what are we even doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't want to blend into the crowd. I'm an individual.
Well, and that's what I think I found, because so for my equivalent would be like on my Instagram stories, I always put like hip hop music to it. And most 38-year-old white moms from Grand Rapids, Michigan aren't playing hip hop in their stories.
Yeah, I know.
But that's just who I am. I've been listening to hip hop since I was 17. Like, that's just the music I listen to every day.
Exactly.
When I cook, there's always music playing. It's
Facts.
always hip hop, right?
Always.
I mean, I'll spend way too much money and drive too far to see Drake. That's just how that goes. And so if I didn't do that, that wouldn't be true to me. And I think where it's benefited my business is that, well, two things. Number one, it brings my people to me.
Exactly.
Right? And me to those people.
Exactly.
So, obviously it brought me to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, in general, like, that's just how I think it's important to have. It's such a crowded space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I accidentally follow like 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how that happened. But, it's like, what's going to make you want to go back to that person's feed or that person's website or that person's restaurant?
Exactly.
And I think that those small little things that you can do that are true to who you are without worrying about, obviously part of me is like, there's probably words in a hip hop song that ostracize some people.
Exactly.
Or people that just don't like it. And
Yeah.
there is that fear that, maybe I should just play Taylor Swift all the time. But, like, I don't want to. And I think at the end of the day, the more authentic I am, the better.
Mm-hmm. And, like, I was just talking to a guy about this earlier today about the restaurant. And, like, he was like, man, like, it's crazy after going to my restaurant, like, how he goes to these other restaurants locally. And he was like, yo, like, we're missing Irie. Like, he was like, and, like, true, like, I kind of subscribe to the if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. And, like, you built something and they're coming and they have been coming and I'm building something. And, like, for context for people who are not in our city, I'm 20 minutes out of the main action and I don't have a liquor license. So for me to, like, get people every single day is, like, it's like you have to earn it, right? Like, every person we get, I always tell people, like, we earned every single customer. Mm-hmm. Like, literally is word of mouth, or you saw something on social media, or maybe the news. Like, you're not coming to my spot because you're in a neighborhood.
Right.
Like, no one's in a neighborhood.
Right. No, I'm never in the neighborhood.
So, like, because of that, like, I'm really trying to win people on us as people because, yeah, our product is good and our experience is good, but the combination of everything, right, makes you come back. And, like, the key in that is being authentic to who you are. If you love country music, play country music.
Right.
If you love hip-hop, play hip-hop. If you don't like music, don't play any music, right? Like, stand out, be who you are, and then you will see long-term benefits. 100%, every single time.
Yeah. Now, have you seen this translate? I personally think it's important to be authentic. I think there's benefits to it outside of the business world. So even if you're listening and you're not a business owner, I also think that the more authentic you are, even in your personal life, the better. So for an example for me, like something I remember reading years ago is that so many of us, there's certain things that, and maybe this is more like girls tend to this, but you might overanalyze certain characteristics that you don't like or that you try to hide or that you're embarrassed by or you try to downplay. But in reality, all those idiosyncrasies about you are probably what your friends love most about you.
Exactly.
Like those, you know what I mean? Like those
things that make you you.
Right. Don't you agree with that?
100% agree with that. And I think dudes in a funny way do it, but it's probably more unspoken.
Yeah.
Because, like, you hang out with a certain type of dudes, like, there's the alpha and the beta, right? So, like, from, like, just how humans work, obviously, like, there's a standard that's being set that I think I see a lot of men try to subscribe to and fit into. And it's like, man, like, it'd be so cool. And I can tell, like, people.
I never thought about that.
I'm like, it's so, I've always thought, it'd be easy, you just be yourself.
Right. It's
like,
so
just be you.
Isn't
like,
that so much easier?
So much easier. Like, then you stop.
So you're saying there'll be guys that are acting more alpha because they think they're supposed to?
100%.
Oh, that's so funny.
The only fake alphas I've met in my life.
That's interesting.
Like,
I
dudes,
never
like,
thought about
think
that.
like a chihuahua, right? They bark all the time. They're not gonna do nothing. And it's like we all can see that you're right. But, like, when a chihuahua's being the best chihuahua ever, like, it's the best dog ever. But when the chihuahua's acting like a Rottweiler, we're like, what's going on?
That's so funny.
Right? So it's kind of like, and I'm not trying to say, like, you have to be a chihuahua. I'm just
but you're just saying be yourself.
Be yourself and like be the best version of yourself. Like how many dudes...
Well, that's like I love my husband because he's always the funniest guy in the room, but no one expects him to
that's
be.
That's who he is. Rich is hilarious.
Right.
So I feel like a lot, like I see it with a lot, especially in young men too. Like there's like definitely something like unwritten rules.
Right.
That I see people subscribe to, and I've always been, and like to be honest,
Sam's in the room. We really shouldn't talk about it.
I'll be honest. I've never been the person. I've always been a lot of times the leader.
Yeah.
So I've always
shocker.
Right. So I've always saw like people.
You a leader.
I've always saw people subscribe to something that like either I created or like the group created that was completely BS.
That's so funny.
There's like funny things.
Isn't
that,
it funny how we follow the herd?
Right, and it's like I noticed that, and like obviously me too. Like when I'm not the leader in the room, I also tend to follow the herd. Yeah. Right? And like, but I do have that compass internally that's like, okay. Right, like you're not being authentic right now. Right. Like imagine us like going to Detroit on a trip and we're listening to Taylor Swift the whole time and I have to fake that I like Taylor Swift. No. For 2 hours in the car.
That'd be rough.
That'd be rough.
But to your point, just like how people can
For
tell.
what though, too, right?
And also, like people can tell.
Yeah.
Like A, you're not kidding anyone. Mm-hmm. And then B, it's like, what's the point? And then C, again, it's like, if you're doing that, you're, like, isn't it easier to be around people, and even, like, it could be clients or customers that are your true, like, they want to be there as much as you want to.
Exactly.
I think that, in general, that's how you're going to grow a business and sustain a business long term.
Exactly. And even personal relationships in life. Anyone that's struggling right now of like not being authentic is probably because you haven't spent enough time knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to somebody who was like, a lot of people, and you can't be with yourself for 20 minutes. Yeah. Right? Like you really got to work on, are you just subscribing to a version every new group you're in? Right. Or you're actually being yourself. And you could be a people person where you're
so that's a tip right there is if you aren't sure of who you are, slow down. Yeah. Everything's so fast paced. Yeah. B, spend some time alone. And figure yourself out. And it could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could just be quiet time in a room.
Third, have the courage to like fight for who you are. Yeah. I think we have a lot of suicides and all this stuff because people are not being authentic to themselves. And I think they're so scared to be themselves, which then leads to a whole onset of issues. It's like you're not being yourself every single day. And then like you hate yourself for not being yourself every single day. And then like it's a continual cycle. Mm-hmm. And it's like if you just stopped and be yourself, and we always talk about hustle and entrepreneurship and working hard and all this kind of stuff. I see a lot of people who like are in the business world who don't have the capacity to do it, who are forcing themselves to do something because that's what's out right now.
Or what they think they're supposed to do.
Exactly. And it's like live your own world, play your own game. Like I really have fun at work, and I really like to work. Like I really like to spend my time doing something. Right. But like I also like to chill and sleep too. Right. So it's like, be authentic because like I said, you really will reap the rewards. But in your personal life, I feel like I know it's hard too because like I'm a good like an empath. I can read people really well. So I can always tell somebody who's just trying to. And it's like, hey, I'm always like, and I'm pushy. So you know me, like, I'm so authentic to the point where like sometimes I shouldn't be talking, but I can't stop talking. Right. And sometimes it gets a little disrespectful, or it could be like a cocky statement or condescending. Like I understand that about myself, but I'm really a champion of like being who you are. Yeah. Right. Like loving who you are, being who you are. Mm-hmm. Right. Because with authenticity, I think you can also have humility and all these other things. Right. Right. If you're authentic, you're like buying to a persona. And let's say you're super egocentric, super cocky. That's who you're pretending to be, right? You start buying into what that is, right? And then like you stray farther away from yourself.
Okay, here's a question for you. I was listening to a podcast recently, the Life Coach School podcast, my favorite podcast, and she was talking about that. It was called "Lying About Money," and a common struggle a lot of our clients have is that they don't want to put amazing things on their social media, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, because they are worried that they're on these amazing vacations that they don't want to post it because they don't want other people to feel badly. Exactly. Or whatever an example. So sometimes it also goes. So there's people that maybe can't really afford all those things, and they'll like buy a fancy handbag and take a picture to kind of paint a picture of wealth that they don't actually have. But then on the other hand, there's people that do have the means and are living these extravagant lives and going on vacations, but they don't want to post that either. And Brooke's whole point is that you lying about your truth is doing a complete disservice to everyone, not just
Exactly.
yourself, but to the other people. So
Exactly.
what are your thoughts on that? And I can understand the
If you're
thought behind it, but
if you're faking wealth and that kind of, I don't subscribe to that, because all you're doing is like perpetuating like bad stuff for you and other people.
right.
Like, you really can put people down a scary path when you're faking it. Like, and you gotta be very careful, because like people will subscribe to it, and people watch it, and obviously the nice cars, the traveling, the private jets.
Right.
Like, people like that lifestyle because it's sold to us in Hollywood. Like, in American culture, that is making it, right? So like everybody wants that to a T. Not everybody wants that actually, but like that lifestyle at 1%. So I don't subscribe to that. I think if you're doing that kind of stuff, you really don't have it, really don't post about it, right? Second thing, you're doing really, really well in life and you like to share just to share, you should not be afraid to share anything that you have.
Right.
I think you should also be conscious that people are gonna love it and some people are gonna hate it.
Yeah.
But like you can't live your life based off other people's opinions anyway. The people that love it, great. The people that hate it, great.
Right.
I think it's like the same kind of reaction. It's like, if I do something, a lot of times I always tell people I do it for me. Like,
Right.
I get a nice car, I like cars.
Right.
I'm not getting a nice car because I want you to be like, nice car, bro.
Right.
I'll pull up on you in a beater. I don't care. Right? So like for me, it's like anything I do personally for me. And if I want to share it, I'll share it. But I'm not one of those guys personally who's like, hey, bro, check out my $800 watch. If you ask me how much something is, I'll tell you. I'm not gonna lie about it.
Right.
But I don't do those things just to do those things. You
And
know
I
what I'm
also
saying?
had I have a theory, and actually kind of, I don't know if you call it a theory or just like a belief from very day one. So obviously when I started my website, I don't know if you know this, but Instagram did not exist.
Yeah.
Is your mind blown right there? A little bit. So Instagram started 4 months after I started my business. But obviously when you start off on Instagram, you don't have a following.
Yeah.
So I didn't start it as full time, like making a bunch of money on a blog.
Yeah.
When I started, none of that existed, right? So naturally, I'm an oversharer. That's how I became an online influencer, because I share everything I do all the time.
Exactly.
I was doing that for years before I got paid for it.
Exactly.
Right? So part one of that is that the reason I think I'm authentic is because I started this way before there were like fancy cameras and video editing, photo editing.
Yeah.
I wasn't even following other people for years. It was just me putting stuff out there. So I wasn't really concerned about. So that's part of it. But my other thing is that in terms of like the whole highlights reel not being authentic, I actually don't post a lot of negative things on. For example, you're not going to see me complaining about my kids or complaining about how messy my house is or complaining about my, I don't know. I don't feel like people go online. It's like, I think of the internet as like a backyard barbecue. People are going online to like relax, zone out, laugh. Like they want it to be funny and upbeat. They don't really want to go and see your messy closet. At least when I'm consuming content, I don't want to sit and watch moms complaining about their lives.
Yeah.
That's just not interesting or entertaining to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a first world problem, and like we all have them, and I don't really need to hear about yours.
Exactly.
So the result of that is
Facts.
that, right? Like if you see me complaining on the internet, slap me in the face, because I have nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all have our day-to-day struggles.
Yeah.
I spill things, whatever, and I try to make a joke of it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when I spilled an entire smoothie the other day on the counter, I was just like, oh yeah. It was after our Detroit trip. I'm like, re-entry is the worst. But like, you're not gonna see me like in the car complaining because my kids are clingy. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
Like you signed on for that as a mother. But my point of that is that although you might say, like, someone might be like, well, is that really authentic if you're only showing good things? But that's authentic to me because in general, I tend to focus on what's good in my life. Like, you'll notice, Vince, when I'm talking to you, most of when I'm talking, I'm like, oh my God, I have the best idea.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we should do this. Like, it's, in general, it's things I'm excited about, happy about, want to show you something cool. It's not a lot of, like, complaining about the kids. Like, that's just who I am.
And I think when you think about what you do and like what we all do when we share, is like up to the individual what you're going to share.
Right.
I just think it's like, we all like to share the best things, and like sometimes that can create a bad game. But I'm not always against people sharing their struggles and what they're going through. But at the same time, it's like you don't want your life to be full of pessimism and negativity.
Right.
I feel like. So
I think what you put out in the universe is what you get back.
Exactly. And it's like people will feed into like the complaining and like, And I feel like it's funny, like how a lot of people don't like to feed into like the positive things. If you're actually earning it, you're actually being authentic about it.
Right.
A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to see how good you're doing because it makes me feel bad.
Right.
Which is like this weird relationship about like, I think people have to understand there's so much abundance, right? And like that it doesn't really matter.
Oh, we should have made A for abundance.
Right? Let's do authenticity and abundance. But there's so much abundance in the world that like once you realize that, it helps you be more authentic. Like, like your wins don't ever hurt my wins.
Never.
And if we're friends, it's like it's a group win.
Right.
Like, and then when you start,
or even if we were competitors, a rising tide raises all ships.
Exactly.
Like that. So if another blogger gets a big, like a book deal or a big contract, that's just good for my industry.
It makes it better for everybody else.
If someone makes a bunch of money, that's great. That's setting the precedent that we all deserve our value.
And that's what entrepreneurship is all about.
Right.
It's all about competition and like that's.
So do you ever get a type of way if like a local restaurant gets some opportunity that you don't? Like how do you handle that?
No, I can encourage it. Like people come to me and they're like, I want to open a Jamaican restaurant. Or I'm like, do it, please.
Yeah.
I'm not saying do it like in competitive. I'm just like, no, seriously, like, because there's things that I want to take my brand to. They're like, if you did this way, I don't have to do this anymore. And like, I see there's more opportunity.
Right.
I think when you're a little bit younger, and I'm not talking about age, but just like probably mentally in business, for example, like you get worried about competition. You get worried about someone doing the same thing you're doing, or you copying somebody or following it, right?
But no one's doing it the way you're doing it.
Exactly. And like, but also, it's like you said, like, you know, it raises all like you have to understand that like because there's a Chipotle, there can also be a Qdoba.
Right.
Because there's a McDonald's, there's also gonna be a Burger King.
Right, exactly.
Like we win together.
Right.
Like, yeah, Coke and Pepsi are huge competitors, and like Coke's definitely way ahead. But like, this is what it is, right? And like that's where talent comes in, and like you just gotta accept where you are. But it doesn't mean Pepsi is not a great business.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people are obsessed with being, and I'm one of those people, like being number one and being the best. But it's not gonna come at cost of me being authentic to myself. Right, like I don't carry Coke products in my restaurant.
And I also,
you know how much more money I can make if I had a string of
Right.
Coke products in my restaurant? I just really care about, I'm not saying I'll never ever do it, but like as of right now, how small we are, I really do care about what people are consuming, and it's like.
But that's also, that helps you be more authentic, because the fact that I go to Irie Kitchen and you've got homemade ginger beer and sorrel, you know, that's you being authentic to you.
And a lot of people don't get it. Like, and I'm just like showing like, yo, me waking up at morning squeezing lemons for you is love.
Right. Literally.
Like literally love. Like you don't understand how crazy that is.
Are you hand squeezing those lemons every day?
Yeah, I hand squeeze them.
Oh my God.
But we also got, I'm not squeezing 400, but you know.
I was gonna say.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the ginger I grate by hand.
You really do?
Yeah. There's a process of doing it.
No wonder it's so good.
Yeah, there's a process of doing it. So that's why we also get mad when people like abuse the drinks.
Yeah, I'm
like,
sure.
You see people who get a full glass of drinks and then like only drink a quarter of it.
There was a kid the other day that didn't drink their lemonade, and I was low-key upset about it. It was a whole cup.
Yeah, it's like, come on, don't like. But like again, like there goes back to that Japanese model, like making things smaller and you pay more money for it. So that as humans in this world we're living in, that's been so good for so long, that we can understand consumption and like, our effects on things. But that can be for another topic. But,
right. But that's another example though of you know, I think in general that's helped your business by being authentic and not just conforming.
Let's talk
what everyone else is.
Exactly. And you create more opportunities. Like you mentioned, your business, the more you say no, the bigger your business gets. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, you being authentic to you, it actually creates more opportunities.
Big time.
You have to be patient.
Big time.
You know?
All of my
like,
greatest. So, for example, I started a party series this year called Beats and Bites with a local DJ, where we throw live events in my house, and I create the whole party menu is curated with my clients' products. So, you know, that's an example of the fact that I stayed true to something that's unique to me, that I love to entertain. I stayed true to working with brands I'm passionate. I work with a very small number of brands on a long-term basis. And we had like a DJ here playing hip hop.
Exactly.
So it's completely different than, I've never seen anybody else do it.
Yeah.
And it's completely authentic to who I am. Because let's be real, I would do that on another day without getting paid.
Exactly.
Of course. Like I throw parties all the time.
That's what business is all about.
Right. So
do things you'll do for free.
Right. But to your point, like, I don't think saying no hinders you. If anything, it being authentic forces you to be more creative with how you monetize.
And like,
it'd be a lot easier if I just said yes to anything that comes my way.
I'm on the other side. I say yes to too much, and I'm like a crazy optimist, and sometimes I get delusional, and Was that
So what's an example? You have to give like
my eyes are
specifics.
bigger than my stomach?
Right. So what ends up happening? Like walk us through what happens when you're not.
Well, you know,
Like what ends up like you say you're not true to yourself when you agree to
well,
it?
yeah, like especially if you're like me and you can when you say yes and then 30 seconds later you know you shouldn't have.
Okay.
But like a lot of times it's like again people pleasing, not want to
Yeah.
let go. But also for me,
Oh, so you do have a little people pleasing in you.
I have a lot of people pleasing me. But like my biggest thing though is like I love new ideas. Just love them,
You're like in love with the idea.
right? So I love innovative, cool things, and like a lot of times I can see where I can help, and a lot of times I don't even do it like I just want to help. Like
Right.
you see me, like you tell me
Yeah.
an idea, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of ideas and like new
Right.
things. Like I just love that. So that's what I like to offer, and I realize that I can do that. What I can't do is overcommit to things that I can't deliver on because
Okay.
I'm not being authentic.
Right.
Because I'm saying I'm going to do something that I can't do.
So over time, as you learn more about yourself, are
Yeah.
you getting better about creating those boundaries and saying no?
The way I look at it is like think about going to a buffet, a Chinese buffet or whatever, and like
You fill your plate up.
you fill your plate with all this food, but you really only want the noodles. But like, oh my god, all this food, and you start filling it up, and then like you might eat the first plate,
Right.
and then you go back again, and like you get crazy, way too full, and also you're not eating things on your plate that you picked up. Like that's what kind of feels like when you say yes to too much, because
really
like
looking at it.
you really just wanted the steak and potatoes. But you got a steak, the potatoes, the noodles, the sushi, and the donut. Like
Right. You're greedy.
you're being greedy, and it's like
I think it goes back to scarcity.
exactly, and like I'm not saying you can't have a lot of things. I'm just saying
Drake told me I could.
yeah, right. You can't have everything, but like
But I want everything.
but you want everything, and I think it's just like a balance between okay, like this is what on my plate, and as an entrepreneur, and like while solo with the team, like you only have so much capacity.
Well, that's what ended up happening to me is that especially with children, because I started my business before kids.
Yeah.
Throw a couple kids into the mix, my friend, changes how much you
believe
can
it.
say yes to. And actually, I think having kids made my business better because I no longer had unlimited time. And there's a lot of, bloggers I know that don't have day jobs outside of there are bloggers that have day jobs, so they have less time. But bloggers that don't have day jobs, they don't have kids, it's almost like they have too much time. And I think what ends up happening is they do say yes to so much. Because, in general, if you're starting a business, you're pretty driven, you're pretty hardworking. So you think you can do it all, and you think that it's smart to do it all. But then what happens is your brand becomes so diluted, and there's no actual value that you bring to your clients. Because one day you're talking about Pop-Tarts, the next day you're talking about carrots, the next day you might be talking about Miracle Grow in the garden.
Yeah.
The next day it might be a toy.
Yeah.
Like what brand, what sort of actual influence do you have?
Saying yes to everything is like poor strategy,
Right.
and in business you gotta have a deep top end strategy.
So how do you cope with saying no? Like I guess for you, is it a money thing? Like I know like a lot of people, they don't want to say no because they don't want to get rid of the money. There's no set paycheck. So there's like that fear. How do you...
For me, it's like my eyes get bigger than my
Stay true.
stomach. It's like I love.
So how
food.
do you stay authentic? Like what do you remind yourself, or what do you...
Like literally instantly at like if I say yes to something, I get that 30-second, I'll backtrack real quick, right? Or like be really quiet, or I'll like think a lot. Like what did I just say yes to, right? So like, cause I get so excited.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting better about like what's on my plate and what I can actually do. So, you just got to say no. You just have to.
And when you say no, I actually said no to something today.
Yeah.
And it was uncomfortable because it was a colleague.
Yeah.
And I'm like the type 2 helper. Everything in me wants to help everybody in the world.
Exactly.
But I just can't, right? So, but what I've learned is that saying no, people don't really care as much as they think they do.
Exactly.
Like
they
no
really
one
don't.
really cares that much.
It's a yes or no. Like
No one cares.
like with Irie Studios, I wanted one of my friends of a friend who's a really good artist to come on, and he said no. And like, I didn't take it personally. Like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yeah.
like, because I get for his brand and what he's trying to build, it may not fit.
If anything, maybe you were like I know when people say no to me, I'm like impressed that they're like creating boundaries and you know what I mean. Like that's a good. We should all be doing that.
Exactly, and then like,
Because the more we all say no, the more comfortable we all say no back.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like
and the yes feels so much better when it's the right yes.
1,000%.
Like, yes, it's actually what I was looking
Like
for.
me saying yes to this podcast.
Exactly.
Aren't you glad I did?
I'm super excited. But like, yeah, it just makes sense. And then you get something to do, and then you try it, and you work on it, you get better, and then like you can have something at the end of it that's like actually valuable. And it's like that's the reason why you got into it,
right?
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's like think about every time you say think about this is a good analogy. Think about a marriage, right? Think about someone proposing to you, and you don't want to marry that person, right? But you're gonna say yes. That sounds crazy, right?
That sounds absurd.
Right? You hate this person. They're the worst person ever. But you're gonna say yes to them. Like, don't. Just say no. And like, take the 30 minutes of pain or awkwardness, but have 30 years of happiness.
You know how someone described that to me? This is such a good quote. Choose temporary discomfort over long-term resentment.
Mm-hmm.
So that no will be a temporary discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had to write some really rough emails. I've had to have some really bad phone calls. I've had to have some really bad meetings in person. But that temporary discomfort is always better than long-term resentment.
Exactly.
Because you're going to regret it.
And for people who are like me, who like learn things, like I learned the wall. I learned you can't run through walls by running into the wall. Right? I'm not the person where you're like, don't run into the wall, you're going to hurt your face. I'm like, I can run through this wall. Right? And I'm going to run through it. If you're like that kind of personality, like say the yes to the thing you want to say no to. And then feel it, what it feels like to be in that.
Right.
And then remember that feeling. I have these like moments in my life that I remember. Like I'll never want to feel it ever again in my life.
Ever again.
Because I went through it.
Right.
I'm like a tester. I'm an experienced kind of guy. So if you're that kind of person as well, say yes or do the thing you like that may not be the right fit for you.
Right.
Experience it so much that like you'll never ever do it again. Cause like or then do it for things that you love. You're like, all right, I really really love this.
Right.
So I want to be doing it. Right. And instead of like maybe playing too much in the gray where you really don't know either or, that could be really difficult for decision making. I think also and being authentic. If you really haven't tested anything or tried anything, well then you should say yes to everything because you haven't.
That's true.
Yet. Now, if you're firm on the process and like you're building a business, you're building a career, you're building a life, and there's things that you know that you like, you shouldn't. You get to a point where you don't have to say yes anymore to everything. And I think like if you're in the beginning stages, like for me, and you're like me, say yes, do it. Like I've tried network marketing before, right?
Right.
And I did it.
Didn't like it.
Don't
Wasn't
like
for
it.
You. So now you know that's a no.
And I kind of despise it a little bit, and I never like so like for me it's like.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you see someone being inauthentic, whether it's in real life or as someone online or another business owner, maybe another brand that you follow or you admire, and then you see them doing something that isn't on brand or isn't authentic or isn't true to that line of business, what would you like? How does that make you feel? And what would be your biggest takeaway as far as a piece of advice to someone that might be struggling with doing
so like oddly I really don't judge. I can sense it, and like, I think I feel
probably you empathize a little.
Yeah, I feel a little bad because I know it's coming from insecurity.
Sympathy.
Right? It's like it's not coming. A lot of times it's not coming from where you think it's coming from.
Right.
It's like some insecurity within yourself or some self-measured.
Don't they say every decision's fear or love based?
Exactly.
So that's probably in the fear category.
Fear-based decisions. So I kind of feel bad for people who are being inauthentic, because like I'm just like, yo, it's like the grass is greener on your side. Yeah. Just be yourself. Right. It's your grass. It could be sand. It could be a pool. I don't care what it is. But like, like it's so much better. You just gotta.
So I think the key is just leading by example.
Yeah.
As opposed to, of course, you don't want to judge other people or come down on them.
Exactly.
And I think that's definitely a good.
And someone like me who has so much aspirations for my friends and my family around me, I also try not to put what I want for somebody either. Right. If you have influence on somebody or you have influence on people or like you're charismatic, like a lot of times, like I'm a lot of times in the group setting, like in a leadership role, so I can see like me like having influence on people. And like, it's like, what's that Spider-Man line?
You can tell that they don't want
with great power comes great responsibility. Right. Like seriously. So you gotta be very careful. Also, if you're imprinting right on somebody else, like let them be who they are. Right. And like, that's it. Right. And encourage them to be themselves. Like, I wasn't the best student, and I feel like first part of my life, everyone was trying really hard to make me a really good student. Mm-hmm. And like, I felt bad and they felt bad, which created frustration on both ends. Right. Right. So it's like that's not good. That's not good or healthy for anybody.
Right. And I think the more authentic you are to yourself, you'll just naturally attract the right coworkers, the right friends, the right relationship. I think in general, the more you are yourself, for one, it's too hard to sustain anything else long term.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, you'll bring in the right people, so it won't feel like work.
Exactly.
It'll be more effortless, more natural.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes business, personal, across all the lines.
Exactly. All right, so let's wrap up this episode. But let's give people some takeaways. Takeaways for being authentic, how to know when you are and when you're not, and some tips and tricks. So give people one or two things you think on when you're not being authentic, how do you tell? And like a thing to keep you authentic.
Well, the body never lies. So how does it feel inside? I'm super feelings based. So if it doesn't feel good inside, I always can like feel the vibration in my body. And if things are really cool, I can tell. And if things aren't cool, I can also tell. So don't ignore your body. The body never lies. So that would be my biggest, tip right away. And you can always tell, like if you've said no to something, it always feels better right when you're done. And that's an indication that you did the right thing.
For me, being authentic goes on like a tip on staying authentic is like remember to enjoy the process, not the destination. So like remember that on your process, you being who you actually are will make your destination so much sweeter, but the real destination is like doing the thing you're doing.
Right.
And it's like if you have to fake that whole thing, you're gonna hate it.
Yeah, it's not gonna be
like
fun.
if you're faking going to the gym every single day, people are gonna tell that you didn't lose any weight or you didn't get stronger. So like don't fake go to the gym, actually go to the gym. Right? And like because that thing you're looking for at the end of it is not actually what you think it's going to be.
It's not going to feel as good at the end.
Exactly. So make sure you're being authentic. And again, like same thing for me, like if you have that internal compass, as soon as it feels wrong, like pull out, like stop, don't do it. And if you don't have that internal compass, make sure you're trying enough things and you're okay of letting something falter or fail if it wasn't the right fit for you. So like don't uphold things just to uphold them and like not really be there, right? So like if you can't make it happen, you can't make it happen.
All right, I like that. All right, we have 3 things to ask. We would love it if you enjoyed this episode to leave us a positive review wherever you're listening to this. That would be super cool. What else?
I want you to share it up and tell your best friend.
Yep. Send them a little text. Say, hey, you should listen to this episode. It's so good. We were just talking about this.
Talk about authenticity.
And if you are listening and enjoying it, we would love it if you posted it on Instagram or Instagram stories and tagged at Irie.lemon. We hope you enjoyed it. Any feedback you have or suggestions for future, we have a whole alphabet, folks. So if you've got some topic suggestions, we're all ears.
We're all ears.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.